Move on to question number 46. Deputy Darragh O'Brien, 30 seconds.
Margaret, Minister, you'll be aware that following the Flemish decree, the European Court of Justice in 2013, that a working group comprising of senior representatives from your department and planning authorities was established in May 2017 to review the new rural housing guidelines. And I'm just wondering at what stage that process is at, and when do you expect the guidelines to be published? And when they are published, will you open them for public consultation? Thank you.
Under the current 2005 guidelines on sustainable rural housing, planning authorities are required to frame the planning policies and the development plans in a balanced and measured way that ensures the housing needs of rural communities are met, while avoiding excessive urban generated housing and haphazard development, particularly in those areas near cities and towns that are under extreme pressure from urban generated development. Following engagement between the European Commission and my department regarding the European Court of Justice ruling in the Flemish degree case, a working group was established to review and, where necessary, recommend changes to the 2005 planning guidelines on sustainable rural housing issued under Section 28 of the Planning and Development Act 2000 as amended. The working group comprises senior officials from the planning division of my department and senior officials from the planning divisions of local authorities nominated by the local government sector. The objective is to ensure that the rural housing policies and objectives contained in local authority development plans comply with the relevant provisions of the treaty and the functioning of the European Union. The National Planning Framework and the NPF also provides an important context for the finalisation of the revisions to the 2005 Rural Housing Guidelines. National Policy Objective 15 of the NPF fully supports the concept of the sustainable development of rural areas by encouraging growth and arresting decline in areas that have experienced low population growth or decline in recent decades, while simultaneously indicating the need to manage certain areas around cities and towns that are under strong urban influence and under pressure from uncoordinated and ribbon-type development in order to avoid overdevelopment of those areas. Currently, the NPF objectives are aligned with the approach already expected in planning authorities under the planning guidelines. Taking account of the engagement with the European Commission on the matter and subject to the completion of the ongoing deliberations by the working group, I expect to be in a position to shortly finalise and issue to planning authorities revisions to the 2005 Rural Housing Guidelines to take account of the relevant European Court of Justice judgment. We don't envisage the need for a public consultation at this moment in time, but certainly we can see what the working group conclude with, and we can certainly have a discussion here in committee. But I don't think it'll need that, because I think I think we should be okay. But if we can have that conversation here at committee, and if we feel we have to, we can do that. But I'm hoping we won't have to go down that road.
First question.
Yeah, I suppose, look, I welcome the response. It has taken quite a length of time to get to this stage, and when you say shortly, are we looking at in the next month or two? You know, we all have different definitions of what shortly means, but this has gone on for quite a degree of time. Like, my understanding is the working group concluded its deliberations in September 2017. So, you know, I don't think we can make a call as to whether there would be a requirement for public consultation until we can actually see the revisions. I would agree with you. I think the best place for them to go to first would be the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Housing, Planning and Local Government to assess them. I would like to try to get I can't understand why it's taken so long. I know quite a degree of work has gone into it. I know that we've had to liaise with the Commission and others on this, but could you be more specific in relation to when you intend to publish them, and will you give a commitment that they will be brought to the committee in advance of making any decision as to whether public consultation would be required or not?
Minister.
Well, the best indication I can give is that the next meeting of the working group, hopefully will be the last meeting, is January, so this year, in a few weeks ahead, in the months ahead. We should be in a position then to finalise the work after that. Why it's taking so long is we've had engagement with the Commission on this, and as you know, that can be lengthy engagement. The working group met 4 times, most recently in November of 18. The first meeting would have been in May 17, and the last meeting hopefully will be in January 19. So we'll see what comes out of that meeting, and then we can take it forward, and I'm happy to engage with the committee on that as well, because you know it's an important issue to bring clarity. But we will be then closely having to issue guidelines to local authorities to implement them as well, which should help the development of the new development plans in the rollout in the year ahead after the regional plans are put in place as well.
Thank you. We now. Sorry, you had your second question. No, you got it. You'll get it. You'll get it. Well, if you got on the information, if you didn't, then you have another opportunity.
Well, I do have another opportunity.
Off you go.
Yeah, okay, so I was wondering what the situation was. Look, that's helpful. Could I just ask you, Minister, that when the working group meet in this month, toward the end of January, that you convey to them our earnest desire to have this concluded as swiftly as possible, and that it come to committee hopefully in the first quarter of this year. All of us want to see obviously balanced and appropriate rural development that sustains the rural community, and that has to be underpinned by a rural housing policy. And should that need to be revised, which it will, I think the sooner that is done the better, and that it conforms with obviously national planning policy also. But there's a lot of interest in this as well. There's been a lot of discussion around the Flemish Decree, what that will actually mean for rural housing policies in all our county development plans. So I would just ask you that to bring the message to the working group at their final meeting at the end of this month, that we would like to see this concluded as swiftly as possible.
We'll go back, because we've had the same message as well. We'd like to see that finished as well, to bring clarity to this. We have tried to preempt what might happen here too with our work with the National Planning Framework, and you'll see the slight change we would have made there to around the rural planning situation, and we should be along the same lines, because we're all very clear on this, and again, there's often a conversation here about rural Ireland, but if you look back over the last couple of years, quite a number of one-off houses are developed and permitted in rural Ireland, into the thousands. In some areas like Galway, it's the majority of houses are actually one-off houses as well. So to be very clear, as a planning authority and as a planning department, we are open to one-off housing in the appropriate setting and the appropriate place. But I think all of us would agree you can't have excessive in pressure zones in an uncoordinated way as well. The Flemish Decree, is an interpretation of that as well, and I think we've dealt that pretty well, and we'll see what the working group come forward in January as well. But certainly, we'll move swiftly after that to issue guidance to local authorities to enable councillors to make their decisions then in development plans as well.